Hello everybody. I'm happy to bring to you the second video learning lesson. I hope you all enjoyed the first video lesson that we shared with all of you. If you have not had a chance to look at it, then go to your mailbox. There's an email with a link lying there. Click on the link and download the first video lesson and start learning. Today, I have something interesting for you. Today's learning lesson is going to be split over 3 episodes. Episode 1 is what you're watching, and episode 2 and 3 will be shared with you in the coming weeks as a continuation. We don't want to overwhelm you with too much at one go, you see, one step at a time. The theme for today is what practices and habits do highly effective people have that make them successful and achieve more? I think some of you may have got the hint. Yes, today I'm going to share with you key learnings from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by the late and great Stephen Covey. I have a personal attachment to this book, as the early years of my career were shaped by the principles laid out in this very book. So powerful are they that even after so many years, the book is still referred as a foundational book for professionals. As you would have guessed from the name of the book, there are 7 habits in total that Stephen Covey recommends we develop in order to achieve lasting personal growth and development. In today's episode, we will talk about the foundational premise of the book and the first 2 out of the 7 habits. I shall allow you a few days to go over the video lesson, think about the learning, and apply it to your lives. I shall present episode 2 of the series in the coming week, where I will be talking about 3 more habits. In the final episode, we will be covering the remaining 2 habits along with a detailed summary of the book. Sounds like a plan, doesn't it? So let's get started right away. Steve Covey starts off by saying that highly effective people develop certain habits that distinguish them from the herd. Do you wish you were more effective in life? Maybe you'd like to be more productive, achieve more at work, or perhaps you'd like to be a more loving and devoted parent. Whatever it is that you want to improve, you can achieve it only if you change yourself first. And the most definitive way to achieve lasting personal change is to develop better habits. Human beings are creatures of habit. Not only how we act, but who we are is to a large extent defined by our habits. Routines define our characters and make us behave in a certain way. But are there habits that you can develop to become more effective? The tips I share with you will outline an integrated program that, if applied, will improve your personal and professional effectiveness and hence your life. We will be talking about these 7 habits. Being proactive, beginning with an end in mind, putting first thing first, thinking win-win, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, synergizing, and sharpening the saw. Millions have benefited from these tips. So let's get your journey of self-growth and development started with these very 7 learning principles. If you want lasting change, then Steve Covey recommends that you not just focus on your behavior, but you must focus on your character. Based on immersive study, detailed research, and thorough deep dive, Steve Covey concluded that generally speaking, there are two ways in which one can strive for improvement in one's life. The first method is to work on the skills necessary for the behavior you desire. For instance, if you want to improve your leadership skills, you may want to do a course or read a book on team building, building resilience, communication, being proactive, etc. We call this method the personality ethic. Although it sounds like a solid path for growth, it's actually just a shortcut. It makes you believe that you can achieve lasting change by adopting some easily learnable technique. It's like having a slimming pill to achieve lifelong optimum health. Unfortunately, we all know that the slimming pill promise is usually empty. A slimming pill never helps you achieve optimum health. The personality ethic is somewhat like that. If you want to bring about lasting change, what you need to really work on is something which is far more deep-rooted and deep-seated. And that is what we call the character or the character ethic. The character is your fundamental principle of how you view the world. It is behavior stemming from the character that will have a lasting impact on you and your life, because true character will shine through sooner or later. We call this the character ethic, and it is much more effective than the personality ethic in bringing about lasting change. So how do you change or work on your character? Stay with me to find out. So let us see why it is so important to address or focus on something as deep-seated as the character to achieve lasting change. Now, if you've ever tried to navigate the streets of a foreign city, you know that a map is useful. But when you navigate life and the world around you, instead of a map with streets and directions and addresses, we use our perspectives, or what is called the paradigm in the book. So what is a paradigm? A paradigm is our perception and understanding of the world. It's our perspective. And different paradigms or different perspectives could lead to different actions and different behavior. Let me explain this with an example. Traveling solo to a foreign country could be a frustrating and scary idea to one traveler, whereas to another one, it could be an unexpected and exciting adventure. In a bad traffic situation, one person could be seething with anger and frustration, whereas another driver could see this as a great opportunity to listen to some music or maybe a podcast. So do you see? The same situation, but the behavior is different. Our paradigms form the core of our characters. Hence, shifting our paradigms is the key to making lasting changes. None of us is an objective observer in life. By changing our paradigms, we can change our subjective realities, and with that, our character, our outlook, and our behavior. Hence, it is important to focus on our paradigms, which in turn will have an impact on the character. In the book, Stephen Covey explains this with a very, very interesting and touching example. The author talks about an experience when he is traveling on the New York subway on a Sunday morning, It's very peaceful. Most travelers are either reading or some are resting with their eyes closed. It's a pleasant and calm environment. And suddenly, one man with his children enters the carriage. And the scene just changes. The children start throwing a ruckus and there's utter chaos. The children start throwing things around, making a noise, and generally corrupting the peace in the environment. While the father continues to sit quietly without bothering to discipline the children. The author gets annoyed at the father's nonchalance and walks up to him and says, "Don't you think you should be saying something to your children?" At this, the man responds softly, "Maybe I should, but it's just been an hour that they've lost their mother and they are in deep shock." The author's paradigm immediately changes from one of irritation and annoyance to one of deep compassion and desire to help. Not all paradigm shifts are so fast, but when they do happen, they can be very, very powerful. So, which paradigms should you strive for? The most effective ones that we will focus on during our discussions will be large universal principles like fairness, justice, integrity, honesty. Majority of people agree that these principles are good and we see them as permanent natural laws. The more your map of paradigm reflects these natural principles, the more realistic will be your view and the better will be your chances of attaining success in your journey of achieving lasting change. This kind of principle-based paradigm is what the 7 habits are based on. We will get to know a lot more about these 7 habits as we go along. In the next section, I'm going to be talking about the very first habit. The very first habit that the author speaks about in his book is be proactive and take control of your own fate. Now, what is the difference between animals and human beings? Amongst other differences, one of the most crucial differences is that animals respond to external stimuli in a pre-programmed manner, which is part of their nature. But with human beings, it is different. We have the ability to reflect on a stimulus and respond in a manner we decide correct. In fact, we can also pre-program our responses to an external stimuli in a desirable and specific manner. What does that really mean? This means that instead of just reacting to the world around us, we have the ability to proactively influence it through our responses and our behavior. But even though we all have this capacity and the capability for being proactive, many people still choose to be reactive and allow external circumstances to dictate their behavior and their emotions. For example, I had a bad argument with my manager and I go about feeling miserable the entire day. The weather is bad and hence my mood is also bad. It is in a number of these situations that you hear people make excuses like, "I can't do anything about it. He's always like this. It's not in my hands anymore." Proactive people, on the other hand, make their own weather. They assume responsibility for their own lives and make conscious choices about their behavior. You will hear such people say, "Let's try to find a solution to the problem. Let's see what can be done in this situation. I have decided to. I have decided not to." Do you see the two attitudes? Proactive and reactive. Another way to understand the difference between these two attitudes is to imagine two concentric circles. The outer circle is your circle of concern. It represents everything that you're concerned about, ranging from your electricity bill to maybe the current COVID situation. Inside this circle is the smaller circle of influence, which represents all the things you can actually do something about. The circle of concern represents all the things that you have no control over. The circle of influence represents all the things that you do have some control over. Proactive people choose to focus on their circle of influence, choosing to work on the things which are within their control. This leads to an expansion of their circle of influence. Reactive people, on the other hand, prefer to focus on the circle of concern. They go about life cribbing and complaining and fretting about things that they absolutely have no control over. Who are you? Let me share an interesting story at this point in time. Viktor Frankl, who's an Austrian psychiatrist and neurologist, was a prisoner in multiple German concentration camps during World War II. Although his life was full of misery at that point in time, Victor chose to respond differently. He realized that everything about his life was currently being controlled by the guards around him, except for one thing. And that one thing is his response to this situation. Victor chose to respond to the situation in a positive manner. He would often imagine himself in a happier future with his students, teaching them, living a life that he loved. He found his freedom in the small gap between the external stimulus and his response. And sure enough, like a small spark blazing into a roaring fire, his response and his attitude inspired people around him, even the guards. You too can choose to be proactive. And now is a great time to practice this first habit. The external COVID-19 situation is represented by the circle of concern. You have no control over it. What you do have control over is your response to it. You too can choose your freedom between the gap that exists between the external stimulus and how you feel about it. I am going to set you a challenge. For the next 30 days, monitor yourself. Every time you catch yourself feeling miserable, unhappy, complaining, stop yourself. Instead, ask yourself an empowering question. How can I change the way I feel about this situation? What can I do to find a solution for the problem that I'm facing right now? How can I still contribute and add value? What do I need to do to feel happier in this environment? Proactivity can be a profoundly powerful habit. And if you are able to master this first habit, you will find that your capacity for achieving lasting change and growth will increase manifold. So the first out of the 7 habits that we just discussed was be proactive, as that can be profoundly powerful. Here is the second habit. Begin with the end in mind. Whenever you perform an action, you actually do it twice. First in your mind, when you imagine it, and the second physically when you actually do it. Let me give you an example. If you're building a house, it is very important that you visualize what kind of house you want to build. How many bedrooms is this house going to have? Do you want the kitchen laid out in a certain way? Do you want the balcony to be positioned in a certain spot? If you do not go through this visualization and planning activity, chances are the whole construction process will be very chaotic and expensive. Not to mention, you will end up making quite a few costly mistakes. And you may also end up with a house that you never planned for in the first place. That is why it's crucial to have the desired end firmly in your mind. And not just a clear picture of the desired end result, but also a clear picture of the actions that you will take to achieve this end result. The more exact and realistic the mental picture of the action is, the better its execution will be, and hence the better the results. Now, this kind of visual anticipation works in all kinds of scenarios. Professional athletes, sprinters, and marathon runners are very well practiced in visualizing how they will run or how they will bolt from the very first block and how they will complete a race successfully and finish in first place. So whether in the workspace or at home, do invest some time in visualization. As the saying goes, it's better to ask twice than to lose your way once. It's much more productive to spend time planning an action and visualizing the desired outcomes and having a clear mental picture of your end result than just plowing hastily on, possibly in the wrong direction. I have a task for you. Now is a great time to practice the second habit. Think of a project or a target or a goal that you would like to achieve, even in the current environment. Create a clear mental picture of the goal. Now plan the actions or the steps that you will have to take to achieve the end result. And then go about executing it. Beginning with the end in mind is not just applicable to individual projects or the work environment alone. I'm going to be discussing very shortly how important it is to have a clear life goal for yourself. So here is an interesting mental exercise for you to practice. This will help you carry the second habit into life at large. So imagine 3 years down the line, you're not around and you're being discussed inside a room by, say, your spouse, your best friend, your dearest colleague, maybe even your manager. What would you like to be remembered as? And for what do you want to be remembered? How would you like to be spoken about? What would you like them to say about you? Unfortunately, many people spend their time working towards goals that they don't really care about because they never bother to define it correctly in the first place. In short, people generally fail to understand the difference between efficient and being effective. Efficiency is getting the maximum amount of work done in the shortest amount of time. But this is absolutely pointless if what you're striving for is something that you don't even care about. It's like climbing the stairs of the wrong building. You're making progress, but in the wrong direction. Being effective, on the other hand, is like climbing the stairs in the right building. You're making progress in the right direction towards a destination that you care for. Effective people don't just thoughtlessly pursue things like fame and money. They go after things that really matter to them. Everything else is secondary. So how can you clarify your destination in life? Well, one useful strategy is what I just mentioned a while ago. Imagine you're being discussed by a bunch of people. What is it that you would like them to say about you? Write down the answers as a basis for writing your own personal mission statement. This is a document where you define your own creed, meaning what kind of person you want to be, what is it that you hope to achieve in life, what are some basic values and principles that are dear to you, and what are some underlying goals that you would like to achieve. This mission statement is personal. It's an established standard against which everything else in your life can be measured. Having such a compass gives you a sense of direction, clarity, and purpose in life. And it will also enable you to try and align all other actions with it. And that leads to a life that is fruitful and productive. So here are some thoughts of what could be included in your personal mission statement. Think about what really matters to you. What do you really care for? An example could be, work-life balance is extremely important to me because I value my job as well as my family. I really value fairness in my workspace. Hence, I will ensure that I give everybody a fair opportunity to speak up. And so on. As this is a foundational document in your life, don't expect to have it ready and written out in one night. It will require a fair bit of introspection and deep diving into yourself, really. And what could be a better time to do this deep dive than now? You may have to write and rewrite this document a few times, but I guarantee it will be well worth it. Even when you have a document that you're happy with, it should be reviewed occasionally. So I am going to end this video lesson with a quick recap of all that we've discussed today. Point number 1. We are decoding the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We are discussing the 7 habits that distinguish effective people from the rest of the herd. Learning number 2. In order to bring about any kind of lasting change, it is important to not just focus on a few quickly, easily learnable skills. That's just a shortcut. If you want lasting change and growth, it is very important to focus on something much more deep-seated, and that's the character. Point number 3. All of us have paradigms and perspectives in lives. A paradigm is your perception or understanding of life and the world. Paradigms form the core to our character. If you work on developing the right paradigms or the right perspectives, you will be able to shape your character, and that in turn will have an impact on your action, your outlook, and your behavior. This is what will bring about lasting change and growth. We moved on to the first habit that Stephen Covey recommends all of us develop, and that is to be proactive. You do have the freedom to choose your response to any situation. We spoke about the circle of concern and the circle of influence. It is important that you focus on your circle of influence and expand it, rather than crib and complain about your circle of concern. The second habit that we discussed was to begin with the end in mind. It is absolutely crucial that you have a clear vision of what is it that you would like to achieve. It could be work-related goals or your personal life goals. Don't just stop at that. Also create a clear mental picture of the actions that you will have to take in order to achieve those goals. And then go about planning and execution. In the next video, you should be expecting to learn another 3 habits from the 7 habits that we are discussing. In the meantime, do not forget LTBR. Remember, little things, big results. Just like the coronavirus does little things and produces massive, impactful results, so can you. Challenge yourself by taking these little steps, and you will also be able to create those big, massive, impactful results. Till next time, take good care of yourselves, follow protocol, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching us.